Welcome back to another episode of Winning the Moment. Today we have Jen Milks, Ph.D. and MBA. She is the co-founder and CEO of GoExec, and we've got an awesome promo for our listeners today. You can use promo code WINNING25 to get 25% off this incredible product that is for mind and body health. Stay tuned, listen, and subscribe. I know you're going to love this episode. Wherever you are and however you are listening, thanks for joining us for another episode of Winning the Moment. Today, I have an awesome guest, Jen Milks. She is a PhD, MBA, and is the co-founder and CEO of Is it GoExotic?
GoExec.
GoExec.
Although exotic would be really cool.
Yeah, GoExec. And she brought me some of these mind and body pills, which is super exciting. Can't wait to try that. And she's actually going to give all of you listeners a special offer with promo code WINNING25, and they get 25% off?
That's correct.
That's incredible. Well, Jen, thank you for being here with us.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
It's also 5 o'clock, and Blake was so gracious to give us this wonderful tequila that we're going to sip on. So cheers to you. And we'll see how this is. Tastes like Mexico.
It does.
I love Mexico.
I do too. We love Cabo. Cabo's kind of our place.
And it's easy to get there too.
It is.
So fast. Like I love Puerto Vallarta. I love getting down to Cancun. But it's just such a longer travel day from here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually leaving to Mexico in a week for Thanksgiving.
Nice.
Yeah, taking the kids down to Cancun and going to spend Thanksgiving down there.
Ah, that's wonderful. Yeah, Cancun is a bit further. It's nice because with Cabo, you've got like Phoenix, right? And
Yeah,
then
and
you're
you
from straight from
direct.
Phoenix right there. And it's fabulous.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is. I do love Cabo. We went there for my birthday this year and stayed at the Petrogal, which is like on the other side of the cliff.
Yep.
It was, absolutely incredible.
Good for you.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for being here. We have some common friends. So she's got some friends from the podcast. And so we got connected, and I'm going to learn along with the listeners a little bit about Jen today. But let's just start off generically with a little bit of your backstory, and you can start wherever that makes sense for you.
Oof, okay. Well, that's entailed, right? So I started off in Western medicine. I was a surgical assistant, ran a surgery center years and years and years and years and years ago.
Okay.
I'm not going to say how many because that ages me. So let's just say years and
It
years
can't
and
be that
years
many
and
years.
years ago. Thank you for that. That's, see, all this stuff
It's already
I'm taking.
working.
That's right. So I kind of thought I wanted to be a surgeon. I was pre-med. I was like, I'm going to be a surgeon. This is what I want to do. I feel good about this. I can help a lot of people. And then I kind of woke up one day and realized, you know what? Surgeons can cut out everything except cause. And I'm a curious person. Superficial.
Interesting.
I don't like superficial anything. I don't want superficial conversation. I don't want superficial answers. I wanted to know why. So we used to do genetic testing, and we would test for things like recurrent miscarriages and obviously Down syndrome and different types of genetic diseases. But when I started to dive into these genes and look at it from a biochemical perspective and how this actually happens and occurs in the body and what it affects, I was mind blown. Like, there's so much more to this that we aren't addressing in Western medicine. Is this where I feel comfortable? And the answer was no. So I decided, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to go to medical school. I'm not going to become a surgeon. So I told a very good friend of mine who happened to be a surgeon and the main surgeon at the surgery center that I ran. And he looked at me. I still remember this like it was yesterday. We're in the parking lot of the hospital. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm so disappointed in you. You're never going to make anything of yourself.
Wow.
You are missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime to be a surgeon, and I can't believe you're going to throw it all away.
Wow.
Right?
How old were you when he said that?
Oh, you're going to make me age myself. Okay, let's see.
Because you have to say how long ago it was. Just how old were you in the moment?
I was probably 28, 29.
Okay. So still at the beginning stages of a career, because it takes so long in the medical practice to get into it.
So could you imagine, like, this
And was
guy
that like
was
your
my
mentor at the time?
He
Yeah,
was.
that's crazy.
He was my hero. So I thought, like, what the hell? Why is this guy telling me this? And you know what? I haven't spoken to him since.
Wow.
There are parts of me that want to call him and be like, you know what?
You were wrong.
You were wrong.
Yeah.
And thank you for being wrong, you know?
Yeah.
But nah, it's not worth it.
So then what was the next steps after that? And so if I understand what you're saying, you didn't love Western medicine because it's kind of just like a little bit of like a Band-Aid on things versus like fixing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, I'm 37. No, I'm not. I'm 36. And I have like never really been to the doctor.
Good for you.
Because I feel like one, if our body create it, then our body can fix it. Right. And I just, and I've got friends and things who are on different medications. And I feel like if you're having to do a medication to fix something in your life, you should probably look at that root cause of what's causing that thing
100%.
And fix that instead.
Yep.
You know, and if you've done all of that work and you still can't do it, then of course, but it shouldn't be the first solution. Like if you're having to take all these medicines to be healthier or to be skinnier, to be happy or whatever it is that you're taking, it's like there's something that's causing that. Let's just spend our time fixing that instead.
Which is why I said with surgery you can cut out everything except cause, right?
Yeah.
So something deeper is brewing, and it's been there for years. So what is it? Where does it start? Where does it begin? And that led me to genetics. Nurture, nature, obviously there's an 80-20 there, right?
Yeah.
20% is your genetics, 80% is what you do about it or your lifestyle. So it led me down that pathway, and I started to say, okay, this is incredible. What we can do to help people with the understanding of their genetics from a biochemical perspective and how they utilize nutrients, right? How they utilize pharmaceuticals, how they progress to disease. It was so interesting to me. I was like, this is where I belong. It's like that aha moment. You ever had that?
Is that still not considered Western medicine?
To a degree. So my specialty is in nutritional genomics. So I'm looking at nutritional pathways and genetics, or SNPs, those single nucleotide polymorphisms. I like big nerdy words.
I love it. Yeah, keep throwing my way. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, those SNPs, right? So looking at those from a nutritional deficiency or metabolic state, right? So anything that's going, let's give an example. So there's a particular SNP called the NQ01, and what it does is it allows me to understand what form of CoQ10 you need based off your genetics.
Okay.
So when the doctor says, hey, you know what? I can see that you've got some heart stuff going on. Maybe you should start taking CoQ10, which would be great if they do say that, and a lot of them do. But then you go to the aisle, right, in the store, and you're looking at all the medications, or I'm sorry, the CoQ10 that's there.
I've done that before, taken that from
crap.
Costco.
But there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Ubiquinol, ubiquinone, CoQ10. What the hell do I take?
Yeah.
Well, this allows me to look and say, based off your genetics, I can tell that you need either ubiquinol, ubiquinone, or a mixture of. Like me personally, I have to take a 50-50 blend.
And what is CoQ10 for exactly?
CoQ10 is cardiovascular. It's also really big for mitochondria, which is why I take it. Just to support mitochondrial health, keep the brain, the body, everything working very efficiently.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. So you get into that, and then what led you into this, supplements and things?
So I've always taken supplements. I think most of us, in fact, the last poll that I looked at, it was like over 75% of Americans take some sort of supplement, whether it's a multivitamin, mineral, something very particular. So I've always taken stuff, but I've always noticed that I look at it and I wonder, what is this?
Yeah.
What does this do? What is this going to do? What is that going to do? What is this extra stuff? These inactive ingredients, are they healthy? Are they good? So I've always kind of been curious. And I think for me, like you said, we're self-healing mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
We're supposed to heal on our own.
Right.
However, sometimes we do have to intervene.
Yeah.
Due to things we can't control or even we can. Exogenous factors, relationships, trauma, stressful jobs. You know, there's stuff that we can't control from an acute level.
Yeah.
So then we have to come in and we have to intervene and help the body.
And so when you talk about like genetics, so then you're taking someone's like DNA basically,
Yes.
and you're formulating a plan for them based off of that.
Based off of that.
And are you doing that now, or is all of your time spent like developing products like this?
There's so much going on. There's so many fun things. So I worked at a biotechnology company where we did bioinformatics, such as DNA analysis and interpretation, and then I would have to formulate based on that information.
Yeah.
Since then, I kind of decided it's time to go out on my own, which drove me to my MBA, which was the most difficult thing that I have ever done.
Really?
Well, imagine a scientist going in and saying, I'm going to go to business school.
Yeah.
And then setting a quota of being like, okay, I'm going to do this in 13 months and I'm going to make a 4.0 just because I'm OCD. And
Where did you get your MBA at?
At Texas A&M.
Okay.
Great school, great program.
Go Aggies.
The hardest thing I've ever done. It was so difficult.
Did you actually go to College Station, or was that online?
It was all online.
So how many years did you spend in school?
Total?
Yeah.
Well, if you ask my daughters, it's been since the day they were born. And this will age me. My oldest is turning 23 this week. So.
Oh, wow. That's a bunch of education.
It is. It is a lot. I would have to say I was 21 when I started.
Wow, that's amazing. And so when you do like that DNA stuff, is that also, are you giving like dietary suggestions too based on their DNA?
Absolutely.
I think that's fascinating because I think that everyone's body is different. And so finding like what's the right, because there's so many nutritional experts out there and things that you can try. But I think tying it to your genetics is obviously would be the best way to go, because that's just your body telling you what it needs or doesn't need or doesn't
it helps you be more sustainable, right?
Yeah.
And keep kind of a sustainability, because somebody could say, okay, you need to go on this diet where you can only have vegetables. But if that doesn't work for you, you're not going to do it for a long time.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, based off your DNA and your lifestyle, what's sustainable for you? Hey, let's cut out these seed oils. Let's drop McDonald's. And here's some ways to help you make good food and eat high protein at home. It makes it a little bit easier for people to digest and be able to say, okay, well, I don't have to cut all the things out of my life and then slowly reintroduce. That's tough. And it's actually shocking to the system as well.
So I'm curious I don't know if you can talk about this or not, but what it was with your medical background, what were you thinking when COVID was happening?
Cody, let's just dive right into that one.
I would just love to have an expert's opinion, you know?
Well, so at first it was like, okay, there's a gnarly cold going around, right? So, okay, let's make sure we bump up our immune system. Let's take some vitamin D. Let's take the zinc. Let's take all the things. And then it got weird. And I started to like look at the data, and I started to like the urgency behind it, right? They almost were coming at us like it was the Black Plague. Like, we're all going to die.
Right. They literally said you're going to die.
Yep. We're all going to die. And then eventually, if you don't take this injection, this quote unquote vaccine, then we're all dead. You're definitely going to die, right? So we all handle these exogenous factors differently, right? So each of us has this increase or decrease of recovery potential. The goal in optimizing human performance, whether mentally or physically, is to be able to recover from these exogenous factors quicker.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got this cold, COVID, right, back, I think it was November of 19. Is that about right?
Oh, so you got it before 2020.
I did. I only had it once. And, it was gnarly. It was like 2 weeks of a headache, lethargic. It was probably one of the more gnarly colds.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a moment where I thought, oh my God, I need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
However, if you take people who have a less than optimal lifestyle, right? So they eat bad foods, they don't exercise, they're not taking the right things, they're taking prednisone or things that are suppressing their immune system even more. So
what was that thing you said?
Prednisone.
What's that for?
It's a steroid.
Oh, okay.
So they use it which is interesting, right? So they use it with people who have possible autoimmune or inflammatory diseases.
Okay.
And they give it to them to keep the immune system at bay. But what it does, and keep the inflammatory state at bay, but what it does, it suppresses it so much that they're more susceptible and they react more aggressive to certain things.
Oh, interesting.
So anybody who is on any kind of drug that suppress the immune system, they could have been in trouble, and probably were, in the sense of they're going to have it worse and it's going to take longer for them to recover. But then they brought out the ventilators. And they said, everybody needs to be...
Right.
Now they're coming back saying, oopsie.
Yeah, that was like a major cause of people's death, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who came out and said, no, don't do this. I remember being on Twitter, X, now I guess it is. And, oh my gosh, the amount of hate that I made like one tiny comment. And it wasn't anything that was cruel. I wasn't attacking anybody.
Yeah.
I was just like, hey, let's think about this from a genetic perspective, possibly, and let's see.
What's amazing is you have a PhD. So it's one thing if I say that, because I don't have any business saying anything, but you are coming from a place of a medical background.
You would think that would count.
Yeah.
Right. But these people tore me up. Whoever they had doing this at the time, I mean, they were telling me, you're not on LinkedIn. I can't find you. You're not real. Why am on LinkedIn? They can find me. I am real. You're this, you're that.
I thought you were like a bot, just spreading misinformation.
And then one lady's like, I Googled you. I'm gonna call everybody and tell them what a terrible person. I couldn't believe the amount of hate.
Oh my gosh. And what was the thing you said?
It was something about along the lines, I don't remember exactly, and I wish I would have kept it, but I deleted Twitter for the longest time because I was like, what a bunch of a-holes.
Yeah.
Everybody's why is everybody so mean?
Yeah.
It was something about the genetic component. Maybe we should look at this instead of saying that it's the umbrella theory, which I cannot stand. Instead of umbrella theorying this, why don't we go ahead and look at this from an individual health perspective? Instead of saying everybody's going to die, why don't we look at certain people and how they're going to be better off and then help and protect the people and support the people that aren't?
Yeah.
And that just blew up.
That's shocking.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow. So then what were your thoughts on like ivermectin at that time?
All positive.
And what was that other one that was like it's in tonic water?
Yeah, of course. I don't recall the name either.
Hydroxychloroquine or something like that. Like
Hydroxychloroquine. Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Because like the state bought a bunch of it, and then I remember like Utah bought like a bunch of that, and I don't know if it was good or bad or indifferent. I don't know, but
I don't think there was well, anything that they say no, this isn't going to work. You kind of have to be like, this isn't going to work, but this we have to, force you to do.
Yeah.
If somebody says that, instead of looking at it from like, well, this group of people will probably benefit from this and maybe not this group, like they're not looking at it from an individual health perspective. They're saying, no, this is for everybody. And that's never the case. Never the
medically.
case. No, it's not.
So question for you then, you don't have to answer it if like it puts you in hot water, but did you get vaccinated?
I did not.
You didn't?
Nope.
And why not?
Why? I and I'll be honest with you. My daughters are 23 on Friday and 17. My baby's a senior, and they haven't had vaccines since they were babes. It's just something I didn't feel, because I was able to be very proactive with them before, because I was able to make sure that they ate the right foods, they were active, they got sunshine, fresh air, everything I could do to kind of like support them from a health perspective, and knowing my genetics, knowing their genetics. Why?
Didn't feel it necessary.
I didn't.
What did you think with like your medical background when they were, forcing is maybe too aggressive of a word, but like really requiring it in so many capacities? Like from a medical perspective, what were your thoughts on that? Is that like a scary slope?
It is. It is. And unfortunately, here's kind of a tale of how that happened. So my stepfather was a sharpshooter for U.S. Customs. So he used to go over to Dubai. I don't know what he did, train people. I have no idea. So he was, of course, forced to get number 1 and number 2. 2 weeks after number 2, he dies suddenly.
Wow.
Healthy guy, looked just like Stone Cold Steve Austin, super healthy, big dude, worked out all the time, had a predisposition to cardiovascular disease. Both of his parents also had heart attacks and things like that. But he had gone to his cardiologist religiously, and his medical doctor, his general practitioner, oh yeah, everything's great, you're fine, your heart's great, everything's strong. And then 2 weeks after his second injection, he drops dead of sudden cardiac arrest.
Wow.
Like instantly.
That's so sad.
How do you explain that,
Well, and all of it that you see now.
Yeah.
Like it's just crazy. Like young athletes who are, extremely healthy. A prime 18-year-old kid who was the preem of his like athletic prowess, just having cardiac arrest.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And these are healthy individuals. Now, do they have predispositions to possible cardiovascular disease and stuff? They probably do. And I think those people are affected a little bit more. But also think about the cancer risk, right? There's all this talk about these more aggressive cancers that these healthcare providers and professionals are seeing.
Yeah.
And they're like, I've never seen this much of an aggressive form of these cancers. Like, this is crazy. So the aggressive cancers that are coming out, all these things, everybody is predisposed to something different. And depending on their lifestyle and how their body's going to recoup and recover from things, it could, make them more susceptible to something totally different that we're not even thinking about.
Yeah, it was a wild thing to see. And I don't know that we'll know the long-term ramifications of it, we'll have to wait and see. But it was certainly a weird thing to live through.
Yes. It was the most strange.
And like your vaccine card you had to have, and just like all that crazy stuff, I never got it, at least I don't know that I got it. As far as I know, I never did. The only time I ever got tested was in Mexico because I had to come back. But yeah, no, as far as I know, I never had it. Never lost my smell or anything like that. And
that was weird. I think it was like around Thanksgiving, and I was cooking Thanksgiving and dinner, and I'm like, I can't smell or taste anything. So hopefully it's good.
Yeah, my wife lost her smell for a while.
Yeah.
A friend of mine lost his smell. Like he still doesn't have it.
And I think it has some properties that that could be detrimental to a lot of people. And I don't want to, you never want to come out and be like, oh, don't worry, do nothing. It's not that. I think it's super based on each individual person and their health outcome and their lifestyle. So, and their genetics, of course. So I think that we have to look at it from each individual perspective and not just be like, nope, we're going to umbrella theory it, get the vaccine, you're going to die if you don't, and that's it, period. Well, no.
Yeah, I remember when Biden said, like, for all the unvaccinated, it's going to be a holiday of, like, death or something.
The season of death.
Yeah, that was crazy. Oh, man. Okay, so another interesting medical thing I'll ask you about is what about, I don't remember the actual name of it, but that skinny shot?
Oh, goodness.
What's that called?
Semaglutide.
Yeah. What's that? What's your perspective on that?
It's a peptide. So I think it's got a lot of good indications and can help a lot of people for different things. It slows down gastric emptying, right? So it also has an effect on how our body processes and uses insulin. So what are we seeing the outcomes of this? We're seeing gastric paralysis and like all these really strange side effects that are coming out of this. I know people that took it, right? So the protocol, I believe, I could be wrong, the protocol, I believe, is 3 months, and then you have to take like a 3 to 6 month break, and then you can do it again.
Yeah, but do you think people are just like doing it like all the time, like until they're getting the results?
Oh, I'm sure.
Because I feel like beauty salons like sell it now.
Everybody does. I could walk in there, and I don't need to lose weight. I could walk in there and be like, I want this. Like, I have this little pinch of an inch I want to get rid of, and they would say, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's indicated for.
Right.
And I think there's an abuse. I mean, it's like Adderall too, right? They're just starting to give out things like candy, and they're not thinking about the long-term replication.
And no one knows the long-term of that.
They don't.
Right, because no one ever used it in this fashion. It's just like someone discovered it makes you lose weight, and then boom, it blew up.
It did blow up. And leave it for the diabetics. I mean, this is going to help a lot of diabetics and certain people with type 2 diabetes who could use this.
And diabetics is one that you can also cure naturally, right?
Type 2, yes.
Type 2 you can.
Type 1, not really.
There's nothing you can do about it.
No, it's just your body doesn't produce insulin at all.
Okay.
So the type 2, it's just it doesn't produce it as well as it should.
And is that from like your dietary choices and things like that?
It can be a genetic thing as well. So type 2 diabetes, just like type 1, can be genetically predisposed, but it also leads to that due to lifestyle, eating food, one of the big things, and I'm sure we hear a lot of people talk about this, and I'm sure some people roll their eyes, is the seed oils.
Yeah. That's like in everything, right?
It is.
Well, our food here sucks.
It does. Coming from Florida, I was like, what?
Well, and I'm just not even saying Utah. I'm saying the United States.
Oh,
like our food is so bad,
Utah out.
But, and I'm sure that it is, but just like nationally in the United States, like there's so many foods that we have here that other countries won't even allow, like our cereals and things like that. And it's like, once you look at the label, it's like, why the hell is this even in here? It's really hard to make good health choices unless you're producing the food yourself. Like even if you go to what you would deem like, oh, this is a nice restaurant, you just don't even know what's in that food.
100%. And that's why we have to intervene. And I love that you segued to that. So people are like, well, I'm doing all the right things. And like I said, unless they're growing their own fruits and vegetables, they're raising and slaughtering their own, beef and cattle. It doesn't matter what your desired lifestyle is, whether it's vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, paleo, keto, I don't care. If you're not able to do all that and control every aspect of that, what they're eating, what you're feeding your fruits and vegetables, what's in the rain that's coming out of the sky, your body is going to be exposed to exogenous and different things and chemicals and stuff that you do have to come in and intervene and say, okay, I need to help my body detox and rid these things.
Yeah, I mean, like there was a video of like I think it was maybe salmon in a Costco, had like a live parasite in it. And
it's disgusting.
And Costco is like one of the more vetted, better places you can get meat. So my wife and I just barely got a whole half a cow because it's like you just can't. Mm-hmm. You can't trust the food source, which is sad in the grocery stores, but you really can't. And then now there's that new company by Bill Gates, Appel.
Oh gosh.
Right? Is that what it's called? Appel?
I know. You know how we probably all have this one person that we just don't like.
That's Bill Gates for you.
That is Bill Gates for me. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, the pie in the face video with him was my favorite video in the entire world. I must have posted it like 1,500 times because it was so funny. But it also was probably the moment where he decided he hated humans and wanted to depopulate
Get rid of a bunch of us. Well, what's funny is someone finally asked him, like, I don't know where, but like, what about your carbon emissions from like all your private jets, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He was like, oh, I'm not worried about those or something.
I'm not worried
like
about me. You know, who cares about what happens, what I do? You know, and he, you know, you can tell by looking at him, he doesn't exercise or eat right. And it's sad because I used to look up to him back in the day. You know, I thought that he was
I'm sure a lot of
brilliant.
people did.
Yeah.
Well, and he still may be brilliant. You could be brilliant using your brilliancy for the wrong things.
For evil, yeah, for sure. And he is. I'm sorry.
But you know that, so his company, I want to say it's called Appel. And so he created like a pesticide that is considered to be organic, but it's not. And even, so like we used to get our produce at Smith's and we thought like, oh, that's good. But now they're putting the Appel sticker on, and they're considering that fruit to be organic, which it isn't because it has a pesticide on it. But somehow we figured out how to circumvent the system and allow his pesticide fruit and vegetables to be considered organic. And so now it's like you can't even trust like your produce at Smith's.
No, he's evil. Like, who does that?
Yeah, which is wild. Like, I don't understand the reason. I mean, it's fine if you want to create a pesticide. Like, if someone wants to buy non-organic fruit because it's cheaper and more affordable, like that's obviously okay. But don't try and like trick the system so where people are buying what they believe to be or an organically safe produced piece of produce to then find out that it has like pesticides on it.
And that's tough, right, for people, because then they distrust the system and they distrust anything that says that it's natural, organic, non-GMO, whatever, and it actually could be. But you know, I was always taught in nutrition school that if the fruit or vegetable has a thicker skin to it, you're actually okay either way.
Oh, that's good to know.
Like a banana.
So like an apple? Would an apple be thick enough or no?
No, more like a banana.
Okay.
Or, you know, an orange, unless they're injecting it into it.
Well, what do you think about them putting the vaccine in the food?
Oh, gosh. I've heard that. That's terrifying.
Yeah. Why are they doing that?
Because there's a large portion of us, I think more so than what they're willing to admit on social or media at all, that decided we're not going to do this because it is experimental and it is, you know, it does affect your DNA, right? So why do I want to take something that could turn on particular genes that are going to be unhealthy for me? So there's a lot of people that had questions and they're like, absolutely not, whether you know what you're talking about or not. If you feel that this is something that you aren't sure about, you're allowed to make that educated decision for yourself. So they're like, well, let's just go ahead and start putting it in the food supply. Why the hell not? And we'll make sure that people take it. I mean, it's not
Well,
good.
what's wild is like we're just so far removed from it now.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand what the need would be like today for that.
I'll come out and say, is it depopulation? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do they want us fat, sick, and unhealthy? Probably. There's a lot of money and fat, sick, and unhealthy.
Well, that's my problem, I think, with the medical field as a whole is that they're incentivized to keep you unhealthy.
Correct.
Because like hospitals would go to business if they could fix it.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like if you had an ailment and they could make it better, there would be no incentive to do that for them financially.
That's correct.
And their businesses at the end of the day.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
I think hospitals are great, and Western medicine is great for traumas, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I broke my arm,
you're going to the hospital.
Yeah, 100%.
I would probably have to be penetrating through my skin before I would go immediately. I'd be a little hesitant at first, but of course, you know. So,
yeah, I mean, I broke my collarbone when I was younger and never got it. I never went because my dad said I needed to be tougher. You know?
Oh, that's amazing.
It's a great story, actually.
I'm glad I didn't have boys. I'd be the same way.
It's for another time. He would hate. I've told that story to everyone. He'd hate for me to do it on here, but it's a great story. Awesome. But yeah, so I didn't go to the doctor for that.
And there's not much they can do with a collarbone. Sometimes they can reset. Sometimes surgical intervention if they feel that they need to go in surgically. But you know, there is definitely a place for Western medicine. And it's for acute, right? So anything acute.
What does that mean, acute?
So something, trauma, right? Car accident. I hate to use all these negative, things, gunshot wounds, things like that. Broken bones, things where it's something where you're like, oh, crud, this just happened.
You need an intervention to get it back.
Correct. But other ways, it's not a root cause, as you had stated earlier. It's not a root cause medicine.
Yeah.
It just isn't. It's, okay. Like cancer. Okay, you have cancer. Where is it coming from? What's the source? But it's not, how did it happen? How did these dead cells, right? How did this happen in the first place? And why is this happening to you? They're starting to a little bit. There's some medical doctors that are coming out doing concierge type of services. So we're getting a little bit involved in that, but it's not there yet.
If you got cancer, knowing what you know today, what would you do?
Oh, that's a good question. For one, I'm not going to get it. For a second, I guess if it unfortunately did happen to me, even though I'm doing my best to take all the precautions, you never know because you never know what you're exposed to, right? I would do it through alternative.
You would
measures, yeah.
You wouldn't do chemo.
No. And I actually, okay, I'll tell the story. I actually, with my second pregnancy, my second daughter, it was a friend of mine who was the OBGYN at the time, and he calls me up and says, well, because this was while I was in Western medicine still. He said, I need you to come in tomorrow. I got to talk to you. I've got good news and bad news. What do you want? I said, well, I guess give me the good news. He goes, you're pregnant. Shit, how's that the good news? Sorry. No, I'm just kidding. I love my daughter. A little unexpected timing-wise, but that was okay. Well, what's the bad news? Well, you have ovarian cancer and uterine cancer. And I'm like, what?
Oh.
He's like, yeah. So we got to figure this out. So I went in the next day, and he goes, you have two options. I don't think you're going to last your whole pregnancy, so it's either you or her. And I'm like, well, that's not acceptable. I don't want a me or her scenario.
Yeah.
Like, because this is my last child, obviously. So how about both of us? And he's like, well, and I'm like, he's like, well, with other patients and research shows. And I said, I don't care. What are you going to do with me? How can you help me? And he went, oh, okay. I like this conversation. He said, well, it's risky. We could go in, we could surgically remove while you're pregnant, the tumors and things and see where it goes. I said, well, then let's do that. Because either way, you're telling me it's me or her.
Yeah.
This way, it gives us both a chance. And if it doesn't work out, fine. He went in, he did the surgery. I have a 17-year-old daughter who's beautiful, and I've haven't had a problem since.
Wow. So you did have a tumor.
I did. I had to have a hysterectomy post having her, but that was it. And so I started to get curious. Well, how in the hell did this happen to me in the first place? I thought I was healthy.
Yeah.
But there's things, right, that we don't know that we should be doing. And until we really do a deep dive into ourselves, our lifestyle, our genetics, it's hard to know what those look like.
How interesting. So have you done all the genetic makeup on like your kids and...
Oh, you know what? I swabbed their cheeks so many times as poor girls. I come at them. They're just like, okay, they know now. Looked at them, looked at myself extensively. That's where all my research came from, is just kind of taking my SNPs and just deep diving into them. And just saying, okay, what does this look like? And then experimenting on myself.
So is that all of that work going to this product here?
So when I formulated Apex Mind and Body for Go Exec, I utilized biochemical pathways and looked at the genes of high achievers, right? People who are really big into athletics, really big into academia, like people who are smart, people who are fast, people who want to do everything.
Yeah.
And I said, what genes do they have? What pathways can I follow? And how do I formulate to support that? And that's how that was born.
Interesting. So would you consider this kind of like a little bit of a biohack?
I absolutely would.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited to take it. I wish there was like a baseline, and maybe there is, like a baseline test I could take and then like take it again in 30 days to see, if there was any like measurable improvements besides just how I feel. Because there's that placebo effect always where if I take it,
there is,
I may just believe I'm better. But even if that's true, then I am still better.
You're still winning. And there's nothing, there's 4 ingredients in there. The inactives are coconut oil powder and a veggie cap. So I kept it super clean so the body knows what to do with all the ingredients, and there's not any struggle with any chemicals or anything abnormal.
That's great. What do you do, or like what do you believe the optimal, like, obviously this is generic, it's an umbrella, you don't love that, but like what would be your general advice to people to live their healthiest, fullest life, not knowing their genetic makeup, just an umbrella?
An umbrella, that's tough for me because I'm always it depends. That's always my answer. It depends.
Well, that can be your answer. I just was curious if there are certain things that you feel like these are like must-dos.
I think that, well, there are, of course, supplementation in the sense of seasonal approach, whether it's like, okay, we're coming up on winter now, so start taking your zinc, higher dose vitamin D, depending on where you live. Obviously, that's going to be higher or lower. Taking things like vitamin C, utilizing probiotics because our food, as we were talking about, you can go out to a restaurant and think it's healthy, but it might not be because they need to feed a lot of people. Working on the brain. The brain's super important to me. For me, I'll take my brain over looks any day.
I always say I'll take my brain over a functioning body if I could only have one of the two.
Absolutely.
Because I'd much rather be able to mentally have the capacity than physically have it, if given the option.
No, I agree with you 100%. Because once your brain stops working, well, what do you have? You know, the rest of the body starts to slowly shut down. Or even with dementia or Alzheimer's, that's so frustrating for the person who's going through it, which my mother actually has Alzheimer's, and she takes this actually on a daily basis, and we don't have the genetics for it. We don't have the Alzheimer's genes.
Yeah, like you don't?
No, neither does my mother.
Oh, interesting.
So the reason, though, that I think she suffers from this is trauma. Of course, trauma. She went through some really rough relationships. And also, we don't have good detox genes from the brain. She had a lot of surgeries, you know, in the sense
Since you got like those chemicals and metals and stuff like that.
And anesthesia, things like that.
How interesting. Yeah, well, I think for me, I think too many people miss the importance of working on their brain, and they may because there's no vanity really in that, right? But like there's a vanity to taking care of yourself, and like we just all consciously understand oh, I need to take care of my body because I need it, which you do, but you just can't miss, you can't leave the brain out. That's why I love reading and books, because I feel like you've got to make sure you're exercising your mental capacities too.
And that's something else I would add to it, right? Learn, grow, educate yourself constantly, exercise, fresh air, proper amounts of sunshine, healthy relationships, learning boundaries. That's a big thing. And I don't think we realize that until we get a little bit more seasoned in life, that boundaries are healthy and important, especially for professional and for personal relationships.
There's that new guy who's kind of blowing up right now, Gary Brecka, I think is his name. Are you familiar with him?
Don't think I've heard the name.
So so Dana White went and saw him.
Oh, yes. Okay. I know who you're talking about.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'll never go to a doctor again because I've been going to doctors all this time. He had one of the diabetes. I don't know which one. And he went and saw Gary, and Gary's like, I'll give you 10 years of your life back in the next 6 months if you just do what I say.
Yeah.
And it was so fascinating. And so much of it was breathing and sunlight and fresh air and all of these things. And Dana White's interview was he actually fixed my ailments versus I was just getting all these medications from my doctors. He had all 5 different medications he was taking a day for all of these things. And then now, you can look at it and see it. He's got life back.
Oh, he does. And of course, when I love UFC. So as soon as you said Dana White, I know exactly who you're talking about now. Yeah. And the gentleman as well that helped him. Yeah, it's definitely... There's a protocol, right? And it includes many different things. Popping a pill and pill for my ill. This is going to work. That's never the case.
Yeah.
It might make you feel better for a little bit, but they're meant to be for short-term duration. While you figure out, a good doctor should say, okay, let's put you on this to help bump down your cholesterol, whatever it may be. In the meantime, let's work on your diet. Let's help you figure out why this is happening. Maybe do some genetic testing, which they have pharmacogenetics as well. So they have testing where they can see, based on your genes, what types of medications are best for you instead of trial and error.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that would be the only way they'd want to do it,
right?
With that data.
I don't know why every physician doesn't implement that.
Yeah, that's so
because
strange.
Even anesthesia, they can figure out what's best anesthesia-wise for you based off your genetics. So it would help them a little bit kind of tailor and I think be more precise with what they're giving you if you have to take it. But then it should be, okay, let's figure out the problem and let's start to fix that and work and repair on the root cause so we can get you off of this. Not, oh, here's your pill. You're going to be on this forever. There is no cure.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. What are your thoughts on the opioid crisis, with Adderall and Oxycontin, and what are your thoughts on all that?
It's awful, right? It's awful. And if you've seen Painkillers on Netflix, you know how
it was awful. Fascinating.
Gosh, it was fascinating, but it was awful.
Yeah, it was.
They just don't care.
Yeah.
It's all about the money that's in it. And
even their penalty was I think they had to pay $6 billion fee, but it's they made $30 billion and have the opportunity to continue to make money in perpetuity.
Exactly.
So it's no business person is going to ever think that it's not worth paying $6 billion to make 30. So it's that's not enough of a incentive for them to stop doing it. And now they're cleared because they had their lawsuit and they washed their hands of it and they just got to keep doing it.
It's awful. And there is a genetic component to addiction, of course, as well.
I was going to ask you that. So do you believe that alcoholics, it is genetic?
It is partly genetic. Absolutely.
Well, if you were to throw a percentage on it, what would you say?
30 to 40%.
Oh, okay. So most of it is under your control.
Yes, I believe so. Some could be higher depending on if you have a more than 1 or 2 or 3 SNPs.
Sure.
You've got a multitude of them and you're just kind of in this lifestyle where your parents were doing that. That's what you know. That's what you see. That's just what you do. But I mean, we are in full control of how we think, what we do, what we say. Of course we are.
I think I've always been curious about that, like how much of that is really predetermined genetically. How much would you say of our health and our overall fitness is predetermined by genetics?
So they always say there's an 80-20 split, right? So 80% is nurture or what you do about it, your lifestyle, and 20% is your genetics. Now with obesity, that does go up a little bit. So with obesity genes, it's more about a 40%. That it could be a little bit higher now.
So it's like 60-40 if you have the obesity genetics?
Yes. And
interesting.
I do not, which is nice. But as you age, you still have to work a little bit harder.
So what do you think about obesity as overall in America? Like, what do you think is our leading cause of that? Is it that we've now genetically put ourselves at a disadvantage because it's already been bad? Because if you look at pictures of like the 70s, obesity wasn't really like a thing, but now it's so common. And I think most of America is obese, right?
They are. I forget the percentage, but it's elevated. It's high. And type 2 diabetes is rising significantly. Heart disease, cancers, all these things that could be prevented based on a healthy lifestyle and physique and mindset and all that stuff. I think there has been a genetic, so we evolve, right? We as humans have this evolution that happens. We evolve, we adapt, right? We're supposed to. That's how it works. However, it's hard to adapt to things that our body doesn't know what to do with. So everything that they're utilizing in our food supply, the way that they're conducting that now, the way they're growing things, the seed oils that they're using, the sugar that they're putting into everything.
Yeah, sugar it's shocking. Like you would never believe that sugar is in the quantity of things it is until you look for it.
It's in everything.
And then it's like in chips. And then it's like you don't eat a chip thinking like this is a sugary treat. But they put, and most tomato sauces have it. Like there's so many things where you might even think or be in the impression of I'm making good decisions. And yet you're eating sugar, which makes you want to eat more.
Correct.
Because sugar creates a desire for more hunger.
It does. It's dopamine, right?
Yeah.
Dopamine kicks in and says, oh, this is sweet. Lights up the brain through functional MRI, the same as heroin and cocaine. So it's like one of these things where you're just like, you become addicted to it. So
100%.
I think that everything is so easily available, right? It's quick. It's quick, go now, quick, go now, quick, go now. Well, back in the day, there was home cooked dinners. It was come home. It was family time. It was sit around the table. It was it might have been perfect food back then, but I would like to think it was a little bit better. I mean,
I would imagine bad food back then was better than good food now.
Correct. But they were pushing cigarettes back then. So you're kind of like, where's the balance? Candy sticks. But yeah, so I think that we've evolved into this world where everything is just there.
Do you think we'll ever reverse it? Like where, like you said, they're pushing cigarettes back then. And now we consciously all understand that cigarettes are bad. There was a time they even said it was, in fact, good. And so do we get to a point with like the sugars in our foods or the seed oils where that also becomes like evident, like, oh, this is really bad for us. And then the government regulates in a capacity that it no longer finds its way into everything? Or is it too profitable of an industry overall for them to be able to do something like that?
Definitely profitable, right? So there are a lot of companies that are coming out and trying, and a lot of people that are coming out and trying to do it better. 10 years ago, was coconut sugar or allulose or different alternatives as readily available as they are now? No, they weren't. I mean, now you see it everywhere, which is great. So I think there is an evolution of healthy that's starting to come out. But everybody still has this viewpoint that it's expensive and that it's difficult and that it's time consuming and it's all these things. And you don't really have doctors going out there saying, okay, instead of buying table sugar, you should go buy monk fruit.
Yeah, right.
And we still have this acquired taste for sugar, where monk fruit, you taste it, and stevia, and you're like, ooh, I don't like the way this tastes, but sugar tastes good because it's embedded in our brain.
How interesting. Okay, so tell me, is there anything really exciting or anything that's a priority for you that you're working on right now?
Oh, so many things. It's a good question. So GoExec is up and going, of course. Apex Mind and Body is great. Don't think I'm going to push out any more supplements for a while when it comes to GoExec. I've been formulating for a lot of people some really cool products that are going to be coming out.
Awesome.
I don't want to mention their names yet because I want to make sure that they have their line up and going. But some of my formulations will be coming to the market in a kind of unique industry and capacity, so I'm excited for that. We are also launching this AI-driven database that we've been working on for a little over 3 years now.
Wow.
For supplements. It's called Supplementix. It's actually, we have the Instagram up and going, but we haven't launched quite yet. What you can do is you can go in and you can put in data through this quiz that I've created.
Like my personal data?
Yes.
Okay.
And what it'll do is based on the algorithm that I've created on particular choices that you're going to choose, it'll generate a report for you and say, based off the questions that you answered, here are some recommended supplements that are going to be best for you based on
that's cool.
Your lifestyle, based on these questions. It's also going to help with, you can plug in your DNA, it'll give you back recommendations based on your DNA, and then it'll tell you kind of like the good and the bad.
How would someone like me plug in my DNA?
So you use raw data.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But what would that mean for me?
So, and I hate to use this company because especially recently they've had so much backlash. 23andMe.
I figured, that's what it was. Okay. I won't do those. I
don't blame you, but we will be releasing. I have connections with labs, of course, because I'm doing it for years, where I can release my own test.
Yeah. What if someone wants like to get their genetics done or like find out about our DNA, but like not in that global capacity database? But like I just was like, I want to figure out what my genetics are. What's the best way to do that, or is there a way to do that currently?
I think that there are some functional medicine docs and different types of healthcare providers that are able to use particular labs where they're NSF. Not really NSF, I'm sorry, but they're more compliant with HIPAA, so they're not releasing or selling your information.
Yeah.
But that's the question to ask. So if anybody ever wants to test your DNA or your genetics, well, are you HIPAA compliant? Are you, CAP CLIA certified, the lab? Are you not going to sell my information to third party? Are you not going to get hacked? And,
because
my
that's the scary thing.
Found out.
Eli brought that up. He was like, we're talking about 23andMe and like Oura rings and like,
the watch.
Whoop or whatever, Whoop. Right? He's like, the thing is like you're giving them access to all that data, so they're selling all that data. So in the event, like let's just say in the future, this is a doom and gloom situation, but if there is like a biohack that happens, or if there's a bio war that breaks out, like whoever has the access to that data literally knows like all of the things that they would need to use against you.
100%. And that's why there are labs that utilize you as a number.
Yeah.
So your name is not attached to it. You are a number.
Yeah.
So then you have like 00125, that's your number. They'll store that, your personal information for, I think it's like maybe up to 3 months. After that, that's scrapped. And then you are a number in the system. Now your DNA is in there. They can use it for research.
Yeah, but it's not use specific.
It's not use specific.
Is there anywhere in St. George where you can get like your genetics done?
I don't know.
Interesting. That'd be interesting to find out. Okay, so can we take that test now? Is that out and about? Like, is that accessible?
Supplementix is not launched yet. We're hoping to launch within the next 30 days. It's kind of all on my shoulders now.
Okay, well then you just get that to me, because this show won't come out for like 5 weeks anyways. Okay. So if it's out by then, I'll put it in the show notes. Perfect. And then people listening, if it's in the show notes, you can do it.
That's awesome. That works. Yep.
Okay. Anything else that you want to share that's really exciting you're working on right now?
It seems like there's always so much, but nope, just formulating for companies and individuals that are starting up companies or supplement lines that want formulations. I've been doing that. We're looking at joining forces with some people with GoExec, where we might rebrand, and then we'll be bringing on different forms of supplementation. So that's kind of in the works. And then Supplementix. I think that's kind of enough.
Yeah, that's probably a good enough list. Have you ever read my book?
So I went to read it through Audible. Probably you don't have it on Audible, by the way. Yeah. No, you don't. So what I did is I kind of went and borrowed a friend of mine's and flipped through it a little bit. I would say it's been probably 2 months now, kind of when I first heard about you. And I like where you went with it. I like how you talk about your version of success and failure, and your, there was a couple terms that I was trying to recall today that you said that I actually found quite brilliant, but now, of course, I'm in the moment. I can't remember.
Oh, that's okay. You called me brilliant. That's good enough. So you haven't fully dived into that book, but do you have a favorite book or a book that made a really large impact on your life?
Oh, man. I would probably say the one that I listen to repeatedly just because it just gets me is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, yeah. Stephen Covey.
Oh, such a good one.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Another one is The Greatest Salesman in the World.
That's a great one.
Oh my gosh.
OG Mandingo, I think, something like that.
That blew my mind.
It's an incredible book.
I had no idea what to expect. It wasn't even about sales. It just reading it and then listening to it. I like to do both.
Yeah. I've never done the Audible thing. I think that's one of my goals for 2024. I've been kind of like a snob. Like, oh, you listen to it. Okay, so you're not a reader. Like I gotta break that, like my own shit there, because I can take in so much more if I was willing to Audible. So I think one of my goals for 2024 is to really embrace Audible. And I've got like this stack of books that I haven't read because I just have so many. Yeah. And so it's like I should just Audible those, because then I can like still put it on the shelf as like, I know about this book.
100%. And what do I use Audible for? So it's not an excuse to not read a book. I love paper. I love to make notes. I love to fold tabs. I love to do all that. And I can go back and look at it much quicker.
Well, I think it's cool to give that to someone. Like if I've read a book and then if my kids are like, when they're adults, like, hey dad, I'm struggling with this. I can be like, here. Yep. And it'll have all of these things that then they can connect with and be like, oh wow, like dad found this interesting and he read this book when he had this struggle, and you can't gift that Audible in the same way. I
agree. And there's something about paper. And I have a book from the 1800s that's all about health and nutrition, and I love it.
Yeah, it's super cool.
But I think with Audible, the two times that I actually find it quite good to have and beneficial for me is when I'm working out. Yes, I listen to audibles mainly when I'm doing cardio because I hate cardio. My genetics actually tell me that I'm not good at cardio, and when I'm driving long distances.
See, I tried the Audible on a long distance, and that wasn't like, it was too soothing, and so like I wanted to go to sleep. But I do think for running and stuff like that, where sleep is not an option, it could be really beneficial. But I think it's so important what the content we put in our ears, and I really only watch sports, and so it's like a great. If I have like an hour to burn, I should do that instead of doing the dishes or doing laundry or whatever. So that's one of my goals in 2024. Do my first Audible.
I like it.
And allow myself access to more knowledge, because all I'm doing is limiting myself. So that's a goal that I have. Those are two great books, though. I think those are amazing recommendations.
Those are two of my favorites, and life-changing, especially The Greatest Salesman in the World. That should have been first. That was the most life-changing book for me. I love Relentless. I love Tim Grover. My good friend David Nurse has Pivot and Do It and all these great books as well. So there's a lot of good information out there.
So much good information. I mean, a friend of mine, Nick from Book Thinkers, he just came out with his book, Rise of the Reader. But he says, like for $20, you can change your life, and it's so true. There can be that book out there that will transcend. And I even remember the first one for me was Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And it just completely shifted my belief and philosophy, and it's stuck with me now for 20 plus years, and it's still a book that I recommend to people. And so I think, if you're listening, get out there, and if one of these recommendations sits with you, listen to it. Have you read How to Win Friends and Influence People?
I haven't read that one.
I think that can have a similar greatest salesperson effect. So I'd say put that on your list. Okay, so then the next question I have for you, and now you can answer this in whatever capacity you desire, but what's the biggest win you've ever had in your life?
The biggest win I've ever had in my life? Ooh, don't make it easy for me by any means, right? I think that the biggest win I've ever had is realizing that this pre-notioned, embedded in our brains philosophy on life was bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think once I allowed myself to become vulnerable, to figure out who I really am, what my purpose is, what serves me, where I see myself best, that I don't have to be this. Yes, I love what I do. I have a very alpha career. I'm in a male-dominant industry as a scientist, right? We just are. Yeah. And as an MBA as well. I'm in two male-dominant careers and a CEO and a co-founder. It's very male-dominant. But I don't have to be this alpha-dominant woman that gets up with this deep voice like the Theranos chick that drives me crazy.
God. That was amazing. And that was all by design, because she was like, let me embody what I believe leadership to be, which was in her mind was a man, Steve Jobs,
Right. And she followed exactly the way she dressed, the way she spoke.
That was a fascinating case study.
That was unbelievable. But it also made us women look kind of kooky a little bit, right? So
it wasn't a great look. The whole thing was kooky because it never worked.
No, it never did.
But obviously she also was brilliant, because to get a business to be worth billions of dollars, around something that never actually did anything is fascinating.
But the thing is her leadership role came in not because she went out there and was able to sell it so much, but the people she surrounded herself with were the people that impacted it, I think, the most in her business the most. She wasn't super believable. I don't know. It's just this whole, you have to act like a man, dress like a man, talk like a man. I'm like, no, you can be a woman who is in a powerful role, who's feminine and who goes and cries still at night and who has a man that protects and takes care of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's when I realized all these things, that was an eye-opener.
Yeah, it's empowering. Did you read the book or did you watch that Hulu series?
Of Theranos?
Yeah.
I watched it on TV.
So the book is called Bad Blood, and it's phenomenal. It's absolute, highly recommend it. But after I read it, then I was like, let me watch everything on it. So I watched that, which the actress who played her, I thought, killed it.
She
and
did.
There's also a documentary about Theranos that was made with actually her. Elizabeth Holmes is her name.
It was a brilliant idea. It had potential. It could have been great, but they just went about it the wrong way.
She's in jail now.
Yeah. Well, I know she had a baby or two.
She did. Yeah. She got married, had kids, but she's in it right now.
Well,
That's what happens.
Can't tell. Okay. You can't predict things on people's health.
So if we were to summarize that down, your biggest win was determining that you get to basically dictate what you want your life to be versus following society's pre-imposed definition of it.
Definitely that. And also definitely that I can be vulnerable and still be a leader. You can be a vulnerable person. You can be open. You can ask for help, which was something I was like, I can't ever ask for help. I have to do it all myself.
That's really great advice.
And it was awful. To be in that position, it was a lot to bear and this weight on your shoulders. And that's what I initially showed my daughters, that's how you had to be as a woman. Yeah. And I went, oh my gosh, that was my biggest failure, is teaching them that. So now I've gone back, over the past 3 years and said, actually, girls, that's not true.
Wow. So this is like a recent epiphany.
I would probably say over the past 4 or 5 years.
Wow. And what was the catalyst to that discovery?
My divorce.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that anymore?
Yeah. I was in a role where I felt like I had to. So I'll be very careful what I say here because I don't like to point the finger. I like to be held accountable for my own actions. And I think that I have an accountability here. But as a woman, I felt like I was like, okay, I need to be the one that goes and does all the things and makes the money. And we're in competition. It was like a competition more than it was a marriage.
Oh, so it wasn't even that you were like trying to fit those like traditionally motherhood roles. You were like, I'm going to fit the breadwinner role.
Well, so this was when my girls were a little bit older too. So I did the mother. Of course, I wanted to be there for them. And I went to school and worked a little bit until while they were in school. I never was doing anything super in-depth or aggressive while they were little because I wanted to be there for them. Yeah. But I was like, I need to be the breadwinner. I need to this, I need to that. And my ex would tell people he's retired, and this and that. And it made me shift into that mode even more.
Was he, at the time you were having that success, was he also professionally successful or did, so you he let you take the reins?
Correct. And so I felt like I had to. So it put me in this very masculine male role. And I thought I wanted that, and I freaking hated it.
Interesting.
I hated it. So then, got divorced, and went through this self-healing process and met somebody else who allows me to be feminine and vulnerable and says, you get to do whatever you want to do. If you want to run a company. But when you're home, you get to be whoever you want and do. You want to cry in bed all day, not that I'm like that, but you can cry in bed all day.
If you're having a day, you can have it.
Right.
So with your ex then, when you realized that you didn't want that, did he still want that? And that's what caused the break, is that he didn't want the roles to shift at all? You wanted it to just be how it was?
I'm assuming that's what it was, because I had actually said to him, like, hey, why don't you go and, you always talked about being a lawyer or go to law school or build a business or do this or do that. And maybe I expected it to be quicker and there wasn't like a fire under his ass, It's like I'm the kind of like, okay, when I make a decision, I'm like, go.
Yeah, because you obviously, knowing you for 48 minutes, very driven individual.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. But it allowed me to realize, like, I don't think this person and I are going to grow
Not
together.
Your person. Yeah.
I want to grow.
You guys are growing at different rates.
Yes. And we didn't have to do the same thing or be involved in the same thing even.
You just wanted his desire to be the same for whatever outlet that desire was meant to fill.
And that was a big thing for me when I realized I don't want this role, actually. And holy shit, I don't want this role. Like that was an eye-opener for me. I want to be feminine.
It's interesting how in life we can go in pursuit of something to only get it and realize we don't want it.
Yeah.
That's why I say, be really careful of all be happy win moments, because when you put so much weight on this destination and you get there and then it doesn't give you the feeling you thought it would, that's a scary place to be, because then it's like, now what?
It is.
Like I worked all this to get here and now I'm here and I don't like it.
Exactly. And that's when I realized that success wasn't about tangible items or a place. It's about being free, having freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's the freedom to be able to choose what you want to do, to travel if you want to travel. It's not even these materialistics. Yeah, are they nice? Sure, they're nice. It's nice to have a nice home, nice car, jewelry, whatever it is, Prada clothes, whatever you want. Obviously, I said that for a reason. But, it's nice to be able to say, I want to go get these things. I'm going to go do that because I'm able to. But it's not even about that. It's just this freedom of being able to choose what your purpose is, how you're going to serve people, and how you're going to get your message out there.
What's interesting is that we kind of answered each of the next two questions in that question, because the next question is what was your biggest loss, and you kind of shared like the way that you approached guidance with your daughters. But is that what you'd say is your biggest loss, or is there something else that you would say was
That's definitely my biggest loss. Is I felt like I gave them the wrong indication of how it was supposed to be, that you're supposed to go out, they would always jokingly tell me, we're just going to marry a guy with money. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to make your own money, and then you're going to meet somebody who else is doing well. And yeah, that's still the goal. Yeah. But I was so driven on the fact that they had to do something. My oldest wanted to be a dentist, orthodontist. Great. Go to dental school, pre-dental, do all the things. Well, she's in it. And she's like, I don't really want to do this anymore. But she was afraid to tell me that because she thought I would be disappointed in her. Right.
She thought you would treat her like the way your mentor treated you in the parking lot when you said you didn't want to be a surgeon.
Thank you for circling back to that. That's 100% what she probably felt like. Yeah. And finally, when I was going through all of this, I went, oh my gosh, I have to call her. So I called her. Hey, Brooke, I don't think you're happy. Are you happy doing this? Do you feel good? Is this what you want to do? And she finally came out and said no. And now she's in medical esthetician school. And I told her I'd launch her a beauty company when she finishes that. And she's super stoked about that. So, I feel like I just kind of gave them the wrong motherly advice in the beginning. And now I'm like, oops.
Yeah, but I think the value in that lesson is that catching it and then course correcting. Yeah. Right. And not being vulnerable to, you said, not being afraid to like, oh, I already said it has to be this way. So now I've got to keep this path, you course corrected, and they probably learned a lot from that. Really, through that was a great display of motherhood.
Oh, thanks. They're so sweet. They tell me I'm the strongest person they know, and I love that about them. But they've seen me at lows, they've seen me at highs. I've allowed them to see me in these vulnerable, positions and states, and let's talk about it and see what that means. But you don't have to be this masculine breadwinner. You can be feminine and be really good and love what you do, but you don't have to do it all.
It doesn't have to define you.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, and then you also really alluded, so one of the most important questions I ask, I really think the most important is how do you define success, but you really said it, and that was freedom.
100%.
Yeah.
So failure and freedom are feelings, right? And they're different for everybody, of
Absolutely.
course, so somebody could say, oh, I failed it. I burned dinner. Well, I'm like, shit, I do that almost every night. Not really, but you know what I mean? Like I could say, well, that's not a failure to me. That's
right.
Oops, no big deal. So I think that everybody's failures and successes are different. But I feel like with success, don't label it from materialistic or tangible perspective, but label it from being able to choose your path.
Yeah, freedom is so important.
It is.
Because that goes into so many different, because like really even getting the jacket that's a part of freedom.
Yes.
Right? So, okay, well, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, or best way to get in touch with you if they were compelled by your story? What message do you have for them?
Yeah, no, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation. So Instagram is Genmilks, all one word, _PhD. GoExec, you can follow us there. It's GoExec _Nutraceuticals on Instagram, or goexec.com, GoExec.com. I just like to post things that I hope help people.
Yeah.
I don't like umbrella statements. So I like to say, hey, if you've got this going on, here's something you can take or do. If you're feeling this way, here's something you can take or do. So that's probably the best ways to find me for now. Supplementix is coming out.
And hopefully by the time the episode launches, we'll be able to put that in there. Do you know what the Instagram handle is by chance?
I do. I already have it. So it's just Supplementix. It's TICS at the end.
Okay, great. And I'll put all that in the show notes. So anyone listening can just go down there and click. And then for all the listeners, remember, if you use promo code WINNING25, you get 25% off Apex's Mind and Body. And so how many days does this last? Is 30 days?
30-day supply, 2 capsules per day. In the morning, no caffeine, all natural. We're looking at short-term cognition and long-term brain health.
You're saying before caffeine or no caffeine at all?
I take it with my coffee.
Oh, you do?
Heck
okay.
Yeah.
So you're fine with caffeine?
Yes.
Okay.
Caffeine's great for the brain. Okay.
I thought about eliminating caffeine next year too. Thought about it.
It's up to you. But if you're doing caffeine in the sense of black coffee or teas or things like that.
Yeah, I take my coffee with almond milk and then like a little vanilla dropper. So it's not too bad.
Not too bad. Right. You're not going to Starbucks and loading up on 120 grams of sugar. Well, if you cut that out, you'd be better off. But I think caffeine has great potential for neurotransmitters. It's great for the brain. It's great for a lot of things. So I'm not anti-caffeine. When people are like, I'm coming off coffee, I'm like, I'm sorry. I can't and won't.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, that gives me all the reason not to quit. So thank you for that.
Shoot.
All right, Jen. Well, thank you so much for being with us. This was a really informative episode, super fun, but definitely the most educated person on the podcast yet. So you get to hold that crown.
Thank you.
And then for all the listeners, remember, goexc.com, promo code WINNING25. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate you.